KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Live from the NBC News radio broadcasting studios of KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. We're located here in beautiful sunny California. Thanks for tuning into the Water Zone. Good afternoon. I'm Rob Starr, along with Mr. Mike Barron, who I call famously Mr. Mikeypedia, because he knows all. He is the wizard, the best guy that I know
maybe in irrigation, maybe a narrow landscape.
No, you have other things we talk about that you're pretty good at.
That's true.
So anyway, we're collectively known as the Water Boys. So good afternoon to everybody. And I was showing a little respect for Mike because he is a good man. So
likewise, Rob.
Thank you, sir.
We're a mutual admiration society.
I appreciate that later. I'll pay you your dollar later.
Thank you. You know my bank account. So.
I don't know that, but I don't want to know it. Anyway, I hope everybody's having a great day. We have some great guests coming up today on our show. But first, we'd like to do what we normally do on our show, is go to the purveyor of Maven's Notebook, the wonderful Miss
Chris Austin.
All right, Chris, good afternoon. Welcome.
Welcome. How you guys doing?
Fantastic. You know, we had a little rain, and I love
a little rain.
Just a little rain, which
yeah.
It's better than nothing, as they say. But
that's true.
But we need more. We're maybe hoping for that March miracle or the end of February, the end of fabulous February.
Yeah, or an awesome April, or
I remember back
big May. I don't know.
I remember back in 2015, we got an unusual, unexpected rainfall. I think about a half an inch or more in June. So who knows? I mean, it's the variability in rain and weather. It just seems to be increasing, at least since we started the Water Zone. That's for sure.
Oh no, it's definitely increasing. We're having definitely more severe, drier years, and some really wet ones too. And this extreme variability, while it's a hallmark of California's climate, it seems to be appears to be getting more distinct. Drier, dry years and more of them, and wetter, wet years at times. And this, I have to express my concern at the federal administration's dismantling of the science infrastructure, because, as I pointed out to my own mother, whether you want to believe this is human-caused or not, we need the scientists to tell us how we're going to adapt to these changes.
But what do you do when you got scientists on both sides?
Yeah,
hire more scientists.
There's both sides, but the truth is things are changing.
Yes.
California's climate is changing, and we need to adapt to that. And putting our head in the sand isn't going to help.
Well,
I mean, big issues for these climate changes mean big changes for agriculture in California. And, we're going to have to adapt to that.
Well, that's going to affect a lot of consumers, because exporting throughout the U.S. of California fruits and vegetables, as well as perhaps other parts of the world, that spreads the
And food security is a big issue. I mean, we've come so far, it's hard to believe. Back in the early 1900s, one of the main concerns of the federal government was ensuring there was adequate food for everybody here that lived in the, because you didn't want your population to starve.
Yeah.
It's not good, so that's how they've been propping up the agriculture system, ever since. And we feed the world, and that's a big deal, but there's a lot of changes are coming, not only climate, but with groundwater management that are really going to be affecting California agriculture.
But don't you think that the state of California, with its various initiatives, whether it's with Department of Water Resources or the State Water Resources Control Board, that in fact they are addressing and are very well aware of the changes that are anticipated because of the changes in weather and the weather patterns.
Very, very much so. I mean, I feel fortunate that I live in California, the state that's paying a lot of attention to that. But I have concern for federal dismantling of important programs. One of those including the San Francisco Bay Delta. But, other large, important ecosystems across the United States. It's very concerning.
Yeah, we should identify, I think we should do a little homework to see, what funding, because not all funding is 100% efficient. I mean, there's certainly a lot of waste in federal government, but it seems to me like NOAA, the National Oceanic and
Atmospheric
Association, do you know if their budget has been cut or?
Oh, it's been cut dramatically. There's a dramatic reduction in the federal government going on right now, and there's cutting of science programs and cutting of the EPA, just massive cuts to programs. And a lot of those affecting California. It is truly very concerning. I think.
Well, I know one that's very close to the irrigation industry is the EPA WaterSense program, and it's a $2 million annual budget that I think, when you think of what it's accomplished for that $2 million per year investment, I think there's a lot of return on that investment. So the Alliance for Water Efficiency has taken on the role of soliciting input and not funding, but encouraging organizations to communicate the value of the EPA WaterSense program so that there is that recognition. Because, if you're not in it day to day,
you don't know about it.
You don't know about it. You don't know what good has come out of it. I mean, you read the reports and all, but it's different than that visceral experience of doing the work on a day-to-day basis. So that's a good point you bring up.
And the way that the government has influenced or pushed for greater efficiency is in products is by setting standards and then requiring people to make them, or the companies to manufacture to make them. You must make cars that run with X amount of miles per gallon by year such and such.
Well,
but there are those that feel that regulation and that's government taking more of a role than they should be. But I think it's really hard. Consumers aren't necessarily smart. I mean, we have a lot of problems with, gas and emissions and all this, and yet we've had this explosion in navigators and, cars so humongously big.
Yeah, it seems to go in cycles, that when gas gets up now, if it gets up to $5 or $6 a gallon, it'll have a huge impact again on what kind of cars are sold. But this reminds me of like 1996 to 2000, when there was a big love affair with the big SUVs, and then after the recession in 2000 and the price of oil going
Remember
up.
the lines in the 70s?
Oh yeah,
baby.
Like there's been this resurgence. But hey, speaking of, big things and big projects, the big news of this week, pulling us back to water, which is what we should be talking
That's
about.
That's right. Is this the big news about the big fix, or?
Oh my word! They had this most amazing meeting at Metropolitan on Monday, and it was so funny because a certain interest group, who shall not be named, put out a press release about this meeting. But it was very clear to me that they only went from the agenda in the written materials, and they didn't listen to this meeting because they would have really gotten upset. Basically, at the end of the meeting, regarding, the state has made this announcement that they are going to cut. They're going to maybe just build only one tunnel because that's what they have financing for. And so at the end of this meeting, a few of the directors of Metropolitan over there said, we ought to analyze financing the entire project because this water is going to be needed and it's going to be valuable and we will get a return on their investment. And they're quite right. But what the funny thing is this is what the people in Northern California, I mean, this has them like freaked out.
Oh, because this is
wait a minute. Metropolitan's going to own the whole thing, and they're all up in arms.
Well, one of the directors, I guess his name is Brett Barbara.
Yes.
Yeah, he was the one that wants to, close the funding gap between the two tunnels. He said that two tunnels could carry more water, a combined of 9,000 cubic feet per second than a single tunnel, which is only 6. And the second tunnel would promote extra measure of reliability in case one of the tunnels gets damaged. So he's in support of that now.
Oh yeah. Well, the idea is, Metropolitan pays for the whole thing, and then the Central Valley ag people, when they get desperate for water, will come to Metropolitan. And there's definitely some people who are not comfortable with that. It cracks me up because I remember talking to Jeff Keitlinger at a conference a while back, and we were talking about this. And Jeff Keitlinger is the general manager of Metropolitan, and he was like, well, if it was up to me, I'd build the whole thing and let everyone come to me, because I don't think politically that's going to work. Yeah. But then these other directors at Metropolitan said, no, we want you to analyze this. Come back and tell us about this. And, Jeff Keitlinger does what the board of directors direct him to do.
Well, and basically the board of directors are the representatives from each of the water agencies that are members, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they hearken back. They say, this is Metropolitan taking leadership, as we did with the Colorado River Aqueduct, where Metropolitan came forward and built that. They were actually organized to build the Colorado River Aqueduct, and there were people down, not people, but cities down here that said, you know what, we don't want your water. And then once they had it built, they came back and said, well, maybe we do.
Well, they know long term there's going to be more people in California, and there's going to be more demand for water long term. So,
and we have groundwater management legislation now. All those Central Valley groundwater basins now have to be managed sustainably. That's going to put big pressure on for water, and water is going to start going for a premium price.
Well, that's a very interesting development. And do you think that kind of position by Metropolitan Water District is going to make other Central Valley agencies or Northern California agencies more interested in possibly supporting the project because they don't want to be out of that club?
It will be fascinating to see how many people are like, oh, no, we don't want Metropolitan to have all the water. Maybe we better come up with money for that second tunnel ourselves.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But those kind of words struck fear into some of the people in Northern California, I'll tell you that.
Well, has in the last 10 years or however many years that the discussion about the water fix has been going on, has Metropolitan Water District ever floated that concept of them funding the entire project?
No, actually, quite the opposite. There are some members on the board of directors that definitely did not want to be subsidizing agriculture's involvement in the tunnel. And although this is different in that Metropolitan would, kind of own the water and people would have to come and deal with them. I'm not sure how politically palatable that solution is going to be, but it may definitely get some people in the Central Valley more on board with the project. And what's also interesting is that with the one tunnel concept, the State Water Project side of things would only be 5,000 CFS for their current capacity, and the whole system, the one tunnel system, could run at 6,000 CFS. So that leaves like 1,000 of 6,000 CFS that could potentially another Central Valley project contractor could pick up and participate in.
Interesting.
So, or others could, which would be a certain amount of water and capacity in this first tunnel.
Well, I'm sure.
So it'll be interesting to see who maneuvers for what.
Yeah. And there's no doubt that if listeners want to see the excitement and I guess changing environment over what's going to happen, who's going to fund it, how many CSF the tunnels are going to be for. Here's where you get the information, and particularly from Maven's Notebook.
That's right.
Yes, the front row seat to the scrum, as they say.
Absolutely. And where can we? Excuse me.
So where? What's the website again?
mavensnotebook.com.
Oh, it's excellent, and we highly recommend those of you that do access that very informative website. There's always an opportunity to provide a donation, and we certainly encourage that. We do that ourselves, and we think it's very, very
best water news in California.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And next week we're going to talk about hopefully some other things, including Department of Water Resources and their new 94-page landscape stakeholder advisory group report that's going to influence the new update on the model water efficient landscape ordinance. So if anybody wants a copy of that, they can email me at mike.barron@toro.com.
Can I just walk across the hall and get it from you?
You bet. You bet. In fact, I'll give it to you right now. So, but I've just started reading it, and wow, a lot of information there.
Well, like everything in water, it keeps flowing.
I like that.
So, all right, Chris, we thank you very much for joining us today.
Hey, great. Have a good evening, guys.
You too. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, take care.
Okay, well, stick around, everybody. We'll be back on the Water Zone with Mike and Rob. We're just taking a quick break from our wonderful sponsors.
Do you hear it? Springtime! And folks across the country are excited to get their yards ready so they can get outside and kick back again. And with Scott's and Miracle-Gro in your shed, it's easy. Whether you plan to grow spectacular plants and bountiful flowers, or enjoy a thick, healthy lawn all season long, now's the time to get outside and fill... Oh, wait. Do you hear that? The sound of great things to come. It's time to fill your shed with Scott's and Miracle-Gro.
Are you looking for a place to buy your landscape and gardening items? Come visit us at Site One Landscape Supply. We offer a large and quality selection of irrigation, landscape, and outdoor living products such as Toro's water-efficient precision nozzles. Site One Landscape Supply has over 30 locations right here in Southern California, and we are the largest national wholesale distributor of landscape supplies in the United States. Site One's knowledgeable and friendly staff is equipped to help you with all your landscape, irrigation, and outdoor living projects. Whether you're redoing your backyard into a drought-tolerant garden or creating a water-efficient landscape for your client, Site One has everything you need, including the latest in water-saving technologies, drought-tolerant plants for your yard, irrigation supplies, fertilizer and weed control products, landscape accessories, hardscape products, outdoor lighting, and much, much more. Visit SiteOne.com to find a store near you or stop by today. Site One. We are stronger together.
Well, welcome back to the Water Zone with Mike and Rob. Hope everybody's having a great day. I know Mike and I had a horrendous good day. We worked hard, so can't complain. And we're blessed that we have jobs.
And that we get to talk about water.
Absolutely. Anyway, we have some really interesting guests coming up. Talk about the concept of what this is. Millions of concerned citizens have been advocating for water conservation for years. We all know that. And it's getting more and more as day grows. And only now, there's the arrival of all this big data, sensors, analytics, automated real-time metering. Can we measure what we've always wanted to manage? That's an important factor. We have we have two guests. The first one is a lady named, which I met actually 2 years ago, Mike, at the California Israeli Water Conference in Beverly Hills. And I was briefly introduced to her, and then we actually got connected again, and then we realized we met before we talked. So it was kind of a small world, which water, as big as it is, pretty much everybody kind of knows everybody, which is good. So our next guest is a lady named Mary Conley Eggert. She's the founder and chief innovation officer of Global Water Works, and they entered the water business to assist a friend in delivering water and jobs in Pakistan. Interesting. Shortly thereafter, she shifted her focus to accelerate the adoption of water technology after she learned of their 2030 report. She now travels the globe to identify and showcase the technology and thought leaders who are helping water work the planet and people and profit. One of the missions, just so everybody knows, of this organization, their mission is to connect businesses with leading-edge solutions that can be implemented today to maximize preservation of water resources and minimize water-related risk of business disruption. So, Mary, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thanks, Rob. Really great to be here with you and Chris.
Good. I know I introduced you first, and I think we have hopefully David on the phone, which we'll get to in a minute. But let's get started with you since you're here. So we understand you entered the water industry with a venture in Pakistan. Kind of a, not a weird place, but you live here in the U.S. Why'd you pick Pakistan?
Yeah, I obviously needed a change. It was a bold move, and I was fortunate my husband was in agreement that it'd be good to make a big difference. And my friend...
Or was that to get rid of you for a couple months?
Unfortunately, he wouldn't actually allow me to travel to Pakistan within the time frame in which we were investigating. He said, I need to make sure it's safe. He is a pretty cautious guy.
Good.
But he let me go to Israel.
No.
Shortly thereafter. But what we were planning on doing is creating water and jobs through an RO system, a reverse osmosis system that would deliver water in the very populated Karachi slums. And I said, because I have a technology background and my role was fundraising, I said, I need to make sure the technology is the best and most efficient if we're going to maintain a business and ask people to put their money behind this. And when I looked to find where do we go to find water technologies, I realized, there isn't any place. And was quite surprised because I came out of the tech sector where we worked with analysts and people who would review technologies and note the state of the art, the performance factors. And there I did later find Lux, Global Water Intelligence, there's a place called FlashLink. There's a water network, but it was very hard to find who produces the most efficient technology, and a little bit easier in your area with irrigation.
Interesting. This is Mike. I'm the other half of the Rob and Mike
team. The better half.
Yeah. Hey, Mike.
Mike's my better half.
But
good to know.
But so as you reached out, tried to find this source of information. Did you have to just aggregate all the information yourself and kind of evaluate the alternatives, or did you end up finding that source of technology information regarding water?
And how did you find it?
Yeah, well, surprisingly, it was revealed. It was in my own backyard. The Water Environment Federation was hosting the largest gathering of water technologists right in Chicago. And I went to that event and realized that water innovation has not kept pace with cell phone innovation. I mean, what you pay for your cell phone, $200 a month, is very noticeable. Most people couldn't tell you what they pay for their water because it's so inconsequential. For the amount you pay for a cup of Starbucks, your water utility delivers to you between 3,000 and 10,000 that same volume of Starbucks to your door. So
wow.
The amount you're paying, a penny to 10 cents per gallon, is not noticeable. And so that's why innovation hasn't happened, because people who develop efficient solutions like in solar or elsewhere are compensated based on the savings, and there's not enough savings based on where we've priced water today.
You know, it's an interesting, from an economic standpoint, it's interesting that the good intention of government regulation was to, keep water pricing low from a political perspective, in terms of charging only for what it costs to transport the water, to process it, and then deliver it to the homeowner. But in doing so, I think the unintended consequence was there wasn't all that much innovation in terms of end user technology, as you identified, versus look at the cell phone and how quickly that morphed into that's a more powerful computer in the palm of our hand now than, the first laptops that were out. So,
or the first spaceship.
But yet there seems to be some innovation going on. Would you say that that's been because of the increased awareness of the criticality of a reliable, resilient water supply, or what is driving the level of innovation today in water technology?
Exactly what you say. When there is no water, there is no business. So it's got an infinite value in Cape Town right now, where suddenly they will not be able to support tourism. They won't be able, that they've extended their date when they will have no water. And maybe the rainy season will make up for that. But California has seen that become a reality. Agriculture without water doesn't exist.
Yes.
So scarcity, regulation, and here in the Great Lakes area, we aren't incentivized to save. And Israel charges 4 times what we charge for water, so it is noticeable on your bank account. And combining the energy with water does make a difference. You can see the lost energy going down your drain because of big data today.
I think that with the ability to measure flows, to identify, I guess how much you're using and when you're using it, and the water agencies are now identifying, the large water users and actually recognizing that if they go and support or help those large residential water users to better manage their water, that has a big payback for them, as opposed to just maybe in general going after all of the water users on average.
There's some water agencies that have apps, or you can go to a website and actually see your results of water usage every single day. So you get that instant feedback is what we miss. I always use your example because it's great. Like, you go to the gas station, you fill your car up, and you know exactly as you're standing there at the pump how much you're paying and how much you're using. On water bills, you won't know till a month or 2 months later.
Yeah, that delay in knowing, that you with water, at least in residential applications, you use it and then you pay for it down the road. Whereas with other utilities, or let's say fuel at the gas station, you pay for it and then you use it. You tend to be more. You guard your resource a little bit better when you paid for it already and then you use it as opposed to the others. But do you see this spreading of big data and more of this real-time flow measurement with the context that you're seeing or in the areas that you're involved in?
Yes, it's actually wonderful because it's bringing together the true value of water. It's not just the water flowing through your pipes and the cost we pay for that material, but the energy used to heat it. It's quite substantial. And then also the risks of, Legionella or the lack of good management of water systems we saw in Flint, could be a problem,
yeah.
or with manufacturers who deposit pollutants. Really cool real-time quality monitoring systems spectrometers can be put out in riverways and water channels to tell what exactly are the pollutants or problems in those waterways so that manufacturers can be penalized or monitored at least.
Yeah.
Well, it's scary when you read some of these reports, like the 2030 report you mentioned, that predicts, and that was done just by, some people know, by McKinsey and the World Bank. They predicted a 40% gap between the supply and demand of water by who wants a glass of water to drink, and that's going to be scary. And then the UN Food and Agriculture report said that they see the extinction of fish in the ocean by 2048. That's just tremendously scary. But a gentleman who writes a lot about water, and he's actually a mutual friend of both of ours, meaning Mike and me and you, is a gentleman named Seth Siegel. And,
I love Seth.
And
yes.
why don't you tell us about what you did with Seth and how you know him and
how I know you too, Rob,
yeah.
because Seth, actually, the day I decided I was going to enter the water business, I told my team they were thrilled about the Pakistan move, and I was ready to leave. And Seth connected with me on Twitter, and he said, "Way to go! Check out what the Israel technologists are doing." And he had just published his Let's Be Water book, and I was thrilled to see that because I was actually an exchange student in Israel and really fond of everything that Israel does, but turning the desert into the oasis. And surprisingly, the next month, I went to that conference where he heard about the fish being potentially extinct and heard about the challenge with the 2030 report, which means only 3 out of 5 people who want a glass of water will have one. And I thought technology needs to be the answer. But I went up to the Israel booth and I said, "Hey, when is your Israel group going to be in the U.S., or could I go visit?" And they said, "Well, they'll be here in Chicago next month." And so Seth and I connected there. We connected again with the conference that you and I were at, Rob,
right.
And then with over in Israel this last September with Israel Water Show with all the water technologists.
Right. It's amazing. I know we have another gentleman on the line, David Epstein. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi. What I'm going to do, just to be kind, because Mary knows you quite well. Mary, you want to do the honors of introducing this gentleman?
Oh, my goodness. So David Epstein I read about in college when I read The Soul of the New Machine, a book by Tracy Kidder, Pulitzer Prize winner, about the race to build a computer and to beat the competition. And Dave Epstein was one of the hardware engineers there, racing against time, staying up tirelessly. And to my amazement, when I went to a water technology show a year and a half, 2 years ago now nearly, Dave, he was a speaker talking about a new shower that allows for us to beat this race against time, to maximize the use of water, because I'm going to let Dave explain this, but he's just a great motivator for us all to see that we could potentially do things a little differently, actually helping to rewrite code. And Dave, I'll let you tell that story about the NASA-inspired shower.
Yeah, if you can also give a little background for our listeners, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Rob and Mike, and nice to talk to you again, Mary. I was an engineer a million years ago with that book, Designing Computers. But since then, I've been founding companies in Silicon Valley here, and I was a venture capitalist for a while, and I teach entrepreneurship, and I'm an investor in many companies. I do clean tech kinds of things, but try to do something that eventually is going to be good for the world as well. And hence, I got involved with orbital systems, which makes this recirculating shower. So I find this is a fascinating discussion that we're having right now, and I think that your discussion before about water pricing and motivations for saving water, but from the way that I look at it, motivations for starting companies that will produce technology that will save water, and how do we make that happen? And as you pointed out here in California, the government has been working against us in that not allowing price of water to properly reflect not just the cost of making the water get from one place to another, but the effect that it has on our agriculture and our systems and our lifestyle is not incorporated. And I think you might remember in California when they tried to price up the water so that people would have a financial reason not to use so much. Some people got together and sued the government because they were charging too much.
That's exactly right. That really went against the concepts that were promoted during the time that the governor of California declared a drought emergency. And we had just about zero snow when we're supposed to have 10 feet or 12 feet in this one area where they measure on April 1st. That is always the critical measurement time when we determine whether we have a decent snowpack or we're like really in trouble. But
I'm skeptical of that date of April 1st.
It's historically
for
been
April
there.
Fool's Day.
That's right. You always get me on that one. But yeah, that is going to be a challenge. I read an interesting article about a pricing mechanism, a pricing program that would basically allow a customer in a service area, if everybody gets their budget, their water budget, that they would have the right to, if they were below their water budget, they would get credits. And if you were over budget, and you could go over budget, then you would pay a premium pricing for that over budget water. But the idea is that money would go to those people, would subsidize those people that were saving water, so that as the scarcity of the water in the period during the drought increased, that the pricing premium would go up, but the incentive for people to save would go up as well. And I just found that fascinating. I don't know if you've ever heard of such a concept before in terms of public pricing of water.
I have heard those things, and it's similar to our energy issues as well, and cap and trade and ways of incentivizing people as the scarcity goes up, and I think that's a great place for a government to get involved and convince people that there's more than just the goodness of your heart to save water and do that kind of pricing, those kinds of pricing things. I think they're great. They always run into a lot of political pressures, as you know.
Yep.
And people who aren't so convinced that they're going to ever have a problem with it, fight those kinds of things.
Well, people, when they talk about water and the cost of water to bring it to people, they think about the treating, the storing and such. But there's also a major portion on energy that's related to move all this water, at least in California, and I'm sure everywhere else. And people don't realize that how much cost that is that has to be added. And even with a water shortage or a drought, they still have to move water, they still have to purify it, they still have to have people to run the facilities. That doesn't go away. And that's basically a fixed cost that has to be maintained. And then you hear that everybody has a right to water. Why should they have to pay? And there's lawsuits going on every day about that.
Well, water's a contentious issue, but from your standpoint, David, has water or innovation around water saving, is it become a bigger part of your portfolio of either startups or investment opportunities over the last 5 years, or is it about staying steady?
It has gone up a little bit, but honestly, there aren't very many because of the discussion that we're just having about if you can't show a business model that's going to make money, and the only way to do that is to show that you can save money by buying the technology, then there's not the incentive to start up these companies, or there's not the money around to say, well, we all want to do good, but we also want to get a return on an investment.
How hard is it? I mean, Mike and I go to lots of trade shows in our industry and for irrigation, and we see so many little startup companies trying to compete against the big guys. And
this is specifically with respect to irrigation products. Maybe something that comes up with a new controller. Well, Wi-Fi controllers, that Wi-Fi sprinkler timers is really the current hot new innovation in the industry that everybody wants. But back in the early 2000s, there was something called the MP rotator that really revolutionized what you could have a conventional spray head body do, and it really created a lot of water-saving opportunities.
We know what that was. Why don't you tell everybody what that is?
Yeah, the MP rotator was a very small nozzle that would fit onto the conventional spray heads that Rainbird sold, Toro sold, Hunter sold. Those are the big three main manufacturers in the irrigation industry. But what made this different, rather than a spray, a constant spray at the same angle and the same distance for a set pattern of a quarter circle or a half circle. This product was adjustable arc, so it could go from 90 degrees to 210 degrees, but it used rotating streams. And the rotating streams allowed it to lower the application rate. So instead of putting water down at 2 inches per hour, very fast, very prone to runoff, this new nozzle, the MP rotator, would put water down at the rate of about 0.4 of an inch per hour. So it gave a chance for that water to soak into the lawn and not run off. And because it was much more uniform in its application, you could use basically less water, about 30% less water, to keep your grass as green as it normally would be with, the excess water from a spray head. So, and that was developed, to be honest with you, with a technology that had first been introduced into the ag industry by a company called Nelson Irrigation. So it was a private company, privately looking at the opportunity in landscape irrigation that none of the major manufacturers had identified as an opportunity, and now it's probably the single largest selling nozzle for spray heads in the industry.
And what's interesting with the goods, you also have some bad things that come with that, because yes, it does put water on much slowly, but if you have an application like a large campus where you have hundreds of acres or 50 acres or such, and you have a time limit by water agencies of when you can water, you may not be able to get all the watering done. So other companies such as us, Toro and Rainbird and others, they came on and we all have the similar type product, but we have different functions and different attributes to the products that differentiate ourselves from everybody else. But those are things that, you come up with a great idea, and then there's some hesitation after it's accepted as a wonderful thing, and then another company comes in and takes what the shortfall of that and advances that further, and it keeps going back and forth and back and forth.
But I would say that in the irrigation industry, for landscape irrigation, the water agencies and the regulators all share a common understanding that half of the water in California in a year goes to irrigate the outdoors, and half of the water is used indoors. And
a portion of that goes into the street.
Right. And basically, they spent a decade incentivizing the replacement of standard high-flow toilets, with low-flow toilets and low-flow shower heads and low-flow faucets. So they finally turned their attention to saving water outdoors through regulation and also through providing rebates for the retrofitting of older sprinkler systems to be more efficient. And so that's where we in the irrigation industry do have that opportunity to deliver an ROI, a return on investment, because we're able to show that converting from the old technology to the new technology is going to save anywhere in the 20 to 30%. And now with tiered rates being more prevalent in California, where you can see water at the $5, $6, and $8 per 100 cubic feet, all of a sudden your bill can get pretty expensive as a homeowner when you're paying those high rates. So tiered rates, as you mentioned earlier, there was a pushback from citizens and cities to say, or I would say citizens to say, those are illegal because you're charging us more for water than what it costs to transport and deliver the water to us. So bottom line is, in our industry, there is that return on investment. So maybe what we need to do is focus more with entrepreneurs like yourself, David, and as kind of as a venture capitalist, maybe to identify some business opportunities, some product development opportunities that maybe the manufacturers don't want to undertake on their own. So,
we were talking about. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, go ahead. If I'd be interested in your comments on that.
I think this is exactly right, and actually, this is a good jumping-off point to show you the other side, which is the inside the house. I mean, you just discussed how this can work outside the house, which is a good half or more of our water is used, at least in California, for outdoor watering. But inside the house, once we have these low-flow toilets and we have efficient washing machines and dishwashers and such, then it turns out that most of our 40% of our water is being used inside for showers. And this is what what Mary asked me to mention here is something about orbital systems, which is, so here's a technology that recognizes that if you save water in a shower in this way of recirculating, and I'll tell you about that in just a second, you not only save the water, but you mentioned about energy before. And if you can save energy because you're heating water and you're also pumping water around, if you can save that energy, you can actually make a business model that can give you a return on that investment. So you're not just dependent on the water pricing. So what this shower does is it's a closed unit where it will load up about a gallon of water or a little bit less than that, and then it begins to recirculate that water as you take a shower. So the shower comes out of the shower head, it flows over your body, it goes down the drain, it gets filtered and sanitized, and then it gets pumped back up into the shower head, and you can continue to take a shower for as long as you want. The two benefits, of course, is the water that's saved, but the other side of it is that now instead of raising the temperature of water that's coming into your house at 50 degrees and raising it to 105 degrees, the recirculating water is maybe cooled down to 95 degrees and you reheat it just those 10 degrees. And whether you're using gas or electric water heaters, there is a significant savings on that side. Plus, with this tiered water pricing that you have, you begin to save, instead of using, say, 20 gallons for a 10-minute shower or 25 gallons if you still have 2.5 gallon shower heads, you use maybe between 2 and 3 gallons of water. And the reason I mention that is that if the water is, when you first shower off, it might be dirty water. We actually detect that to save the filtering system and flush that out. And then the longer you stay in the shower, the cleaner the water is. It's not really getting dirty, so it goes through the filtering system, and you can just stand there for as long as you want.
It's like a washing machine for a human.
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. You're right.
That is so. That I'd never heard of such a thing. Now, is that commercially available now?
It is. So it's a startup company. It's a company that actually has been shipping some in Sweden. Okay. And when I invested in them a couple of years ago and opened up the U.S. Headquarters for it, the first task that Mary mentioned in passing was there was no standard for it. So those you're familiar with IAPMO, it's a standard body.
Yep.
I ended up writing a standard for recirculating showers and got through the approval process. And I have to say that I was very pleased that people said that would take years. We actually signed up with somebody who had been through this before, a regulator in the past. His name is Gary Klein here in California, in the Sacramento area. And he helped me say the right things. And the standards body actually was very open. And because of this discussion that we're having now, they want to get technology in there, and as long as you answer the right questions and the right constituents like what you're doing, then it actually was very quick to get it through. And so you have that. There's now a standard out there written by yours truly.
Wow!
and yeah.
Do they have a website where they?
Yes.
I mean, if you wouldn't mind giving that to us, we'd love for our audience to hear that.
It's orbitalsystems.com.
Okay. Okay.
And it's very simple. And it comes Orbital because the founder, Mehrdad Marjoubi, worked at NASA for a little while, and where they have to save every drop of water, as you might guess. Mm-hmm. And he said, why don't we save water, on Earth instead of only saving it when we're extraterrestrial?
Well, it's interesting. Mike knows this. I sit on the board for the National Association of Home Builders for their Water Efficiency Task Force. And I know when we go through discussions on what they want to offer, so people get points for LEED and so forth, they talk about where should they locate the water heater, how close should it be to the kitchen or the bathrooms and things like that. And this, nobody's heard of this. So I'm certainly going to look that up and bring it back to the committee to take a look at, maybe do a little PR out of that.
David, do you think that the biggest market for this technology would be in new home construction or retrofit?
I think right now it's probably more new home construction, although they are producing a product that actually is easier to retrofit than before. But I mean, you do have to put something on the wall. You do have to bring power into the area where there was where there's the shower system and such. So you do have to. It's a pretty big remodel. If you're going to remodel, then it drops in.
You can do it, yeah.
But I wouldn't say that you want to do. You want to plug it in and not expect to redo a lot of your bathroom.
And you'll get decent pressure out of the shower head, you know.
Oh, actually, there's a pump that's involved. So
Okay.
actually you can get, in fact, the one that we got approved was running at about, about 5 gallons a minute instead of the 2 gallons a minute, because since we're recirculating the water, the board approved that as long as you're recirculating it, you can go at a higher rate.
Oh,
so
my
you can get a
gosh.
much better shower.
Just offering that as a unique differentiation in your shower head flow rate, you know, that's
How would that work with if somebody had a soft water system in their home? How would that would that other system affect the orbital system?
No, not at all. Actually, it'd probably make the filters last a little bit longer because you're pre-filtering the thing.
Okay.
You know, I think one of the things that you mentioned, I think that in general what we're talking about is getting closer to where the use is. You mentioned the water heater. Where do you locate it? Well, the closer you get it to where you use it, the less
energy,
the less piping, the less energy, the less distance, the quicker to reheat,
right.
All that stuff. So I love the idea, and I was in the solar business, of course, and the same kind of thing. If you get rid of distribution by having your solar panels where you use it, a lot of things get better. And that's what I think is going to happen with water, is water usage and heating and energy is going to get closer to where you use it instead of doing it centrally.
There was an article, you know, with the Cape Town water crisis that they're going through, and one of the article headlines said, you know, my wife does not does not shower anymore. You know, that was the catchy headline. I don't know if the husband showers or not, but
we have a lot of that with the homeless down here.
That's right. So, but you know, I'm just thinking that with the kind of savings that you can create with this orbital shower system, that would be a huge market for the future. You know, when you've experienced a bad drought, you start to think about, hey, this could happen again. How do I prepare better? So, but hey, we just have a couple more minutes. And
I got a question for Mary. If I can go back to Mary. Mary, I received today a little package from you.
Yeah, right. Your water-saving kit.
Absolutely. It just arrived. Could you tell our, I know what it is, but could you tell our audience what it is and and how this is distributed all over? And you were talking about, at least to me last time, at the UK, does a lot of stuff like this. Yes.
Right. So I was at the Smart Water Conference in London, and you guys were saying how it depends on regulation, what motivates people to have innovation. And in the UK, they require utilities to engage their customers. So this company called SaveWaterSaveMoney.com, you can find it online, created these mechanisms, a water-saving kit that says, show me the money. And it actually calculates the water savings, plus, as David was doing, the energy savings. So for a family of 4 that wants to save, wants to know how they could save money as their rates are going up, they can see that by taking 2 to 3 minutes off a shower, it's not just the water value that's calculated, but because of the energy in it, it means $150 to $300 for that family for the year. So it's an incentive to actually pay attention to your water use, because there's more to water than just water.
I know you had a little tablet in there for detecting water leaks in your toilet and other things in there. It was pretty interesting.
Right. Well, and what's more interesting to that, Rob, is actually behind it. There's an app that gives you a dashboard that allows you to compare with neighbors, and this will be live next month in the U.S. We're doing a soft launch, and then shortly thereafter, we are working with a number of utilities that are pretty innovative that see the value of going beyond the the doorstep to actually understand, and you'll be very pleased that the water experts said, hey, Mary, this UK app needs to include a lot more in irrigation here in the U.S.
Well, we can be your irrigation consultants at it.
free of charge.
That's right. That's right.
Wonderful. Yes, for your Toro, you guys have been doing it for a long time, leading the industry with many of, as you were just talking about, the shower heads or the sprinkler heads, and so we love that. Love to get you guys involved, and for everyone else, what it will do is change the conversation on water, because we won't just be talking about what are you saving in water, but people will know exactly where they can save, and the utilities will know what is happening inside the homes. That I just talked to a wastewater treatment guy who will then know how to treat this if it's going out as shower use, dishwashers, or just faucet use. Understanding that helps everyone with innovation.
Well, we're coming up against our national news here. People want to know about Global Waterworks. Its website is? globalwaterworks.org. Excellent. Well, hey, both Mary and David, thank you very, very much, and hopefully you'll let us call you offline sometime and talk up some other things that we might be interested in, and get
Keep
some
up
more
the
information.
great work, and nothing but success on the orbital shower system. That's very cool.
Thank you very much.
Very cool.
Yes, thank you both. Really a pleasure.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very
Take
much.
care.
Have a good evening. And everybody, we'll be back next week, and remember, the most important thing to do is to think blue, because
on Spaceship Earth, we are all crew.
I like our spaceship.
That's right. Spaceship Earth. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.